Hi everyone, welcome back to the Crossroads. This is our secret place where we're going to meet each week to discuss the mysteries of the blues. Look what I've got. It's a Blues Junior. This was pretty heavy to bring all the way out here to the Crossroads. But today what we're going to talk about is how to get a good blues tone from one of these. We're going to be talking about what the preamp section does, what the power amp section does, how that affects reverb, and how you can get a tone that you like. So let's go through this little bad boy. Okay, so before we start messing with any sounds, let's talk about a couple of different components and what happens with your amp when you plug in. Well, first of all, when you plug in your guitar here, the signal is pretty weak. So the amp has two stages. You have the preamp and the power amp. What are those two stages? Well, the preamp is the first stage you go into. It boosts the signal and gives it the characteristic sound. So for example, a Fender amp sounds like a Fender and a Marshall sounds like a Marshall because of the preamp section. The power amp is controlling the overall volume. All right, so here's my sound at the moment. Sounds pretty clean. So now I've got the master on 4 and the volume on 4. So your volume knob is controlling the preamp section, whilst the master is controlling the power amp section. So kind of middle ground here, we're not getting any distortion. So what would happen if we turned the first section up, the preamp section? So I'm going to turn the preamp section to full, but I'm going to keep the master about 3, and let's see what kind of sound that we get. Okay, so now we've started to get a bit of distortion in there. Why is that? Because we've turned the preamp section, the first section, up to full, and we're clipping a bit now. So it's creating that distortion sound because the preamp is overloaded really, so you're getting a bit of distortion. Now you may not like that distortion. You might love it, you know. It's kind of a bit fizzy, isn't it? You know, maybe that's what a Fender amp does in the preamp section. So you know. So you may like that, you may not. Okay, so now what would happen if we start to turn up now the master volume? So now when you're turning up the master volume, what's starting to happen is as you go louder on the master volume, you're driving the power amp stage. And when you do that, you're going to be overloading the power amp stage. So that's normally the difference between overdrive and distortion. When you have distortion, you're clipping the preamp. When you have overdrive, you're clipping the power amp. So if I'm going to turn up now the master volume, I'll keep the preamp volume, the volume, on 12, and I'll turn up the master volume to about 4. Let's see what happens now. Okay, so now we're getting a bit of both worlds coming in there. You're kind of clipping the preamp, as I say, and now it's starting to get a bit, overall volume is getting louder, of course, and you're also starting to clip just a little bit the power amp. So let's go a bit more. Let's still keep that preamp section on full. Let's bring up now the master to about 6, see what happens. So, you know, the volume again is getting louder, but we're getting maybe more of a creamy sound now that I'm adding more to the power tubes. sounds great, I think. So what will happen if we turn the power amp section all the way to 10 and the preamp section, actually it's 12, isn't it, all the way up. So both stages all the way up. Let's have a listen. Pretty good. So that's everything on full. Just for an experiment, let's do the other way round. Let's have the master on full and the volume around, 3 or 4. Let's see what will happen then. So now we're driving a little bit more that power amp section. So it's up to you how you choose to do this. What sound do you prefer? You might like the sound of the preamp, breaking up, or maybe you prefer the warmer side of things, with the power amp turning up. It's entirely up to you. Now let's talk about reverb, how this affects all of this. So normally when you have reverb in an amp, you have the preamp section and the power amp section, and normally within an effects loop the reverb sits in the middle. So let's say you've got a really distorted amp and you plug in your reverb on the front of it. It's going to sound a bit washed out and you don't hear the reverb so well. So putting your reverb in the effects loop makes it sound really, really good. So if I put everything back to 4 here again and I add some reverb, this amp has got some great reverb, what you're going to hear is you can hear the reverb very clearly. It sounds really, really nice. Let's have a listen to this. Sounds nice. You can kind of hear the reverb there, can't you? Really great. Now what happens if we do what we did at the beginning, if we turn up the preamp section to full and I keep the volume where it is? Now what we're going to end up with, where the reverb is going to start to disappear, because it's kind of like putting the amp on distortion and then you're putting the reverb before the preamp section, so it kind of, you don't hear it so well and it starts to get a bit kind of crazy. So let's have a listen to that. So again, maybe you like that sound. It's, to my ears, still sounds good, doesn't it? But it sounds a bit washy. Again, if you like that sound, that's great. Let's try the other way. Let's turn the power amp up to full and the volume back down to 4 and see how that affects the reverb. There, I think, you can hear the reverb a bit better there. So that's the power amp on full and the reverb on about 4 and the volume on 4. So there we go. I hope that gives you an idea of the different settings on the amp and how you can use them or not use them, on what sound you prefer, because that's what it's all about. What do you prefer? What kind of tone are you going for? But anyway, there we go. Thanks very much. If you've got any friends that want to join us at the Crossroads next week, bring them along. Be great to see you all. See you at the Crossroads next week.